In the last video, we solved some quadratic equations using factoring, but it's not always a possibility to use factoring. Sometimes things do not factor. So we're going to talk about in this video and the next video 2 ways that we can solve a quadratic equation without factoring. In this particular method, we're going to use completing the square, and along the way we'll use the square root property. Now first I'm going to talk about that square root property. And I forgot to kind of indicate that this is the square root property right here. And it basically says that if we have x squared equal to something, then x is equal to the positive and negative square root. Now, it's very important to remember there's also a negative square root. A lot of students apply this and get the positive square root and forget to put the negative square root. So let's look at a few examples of just using the square root property, and then we're going to get into this completing the square process. All right, so let's solve x squared equals 16. And notice that it is in this form that our square root property shows. So according to our property, we can solve this by having x equal the positive and negative square root of 16. So I think I've got my little symbol for plus and minus here. For the positive and negative square root, always takes a moment to get these, of 16. Now fortunately, we know the square root of 16. Square root of 16 is 4. So there are 2 solutions, positive and negative 4. All right, now I didn't look up my little symbol there, but when you're putting these into my open math, there might be little set brackets that look like this, and that just means you make a list of your 2 solutions, negative 4 and 4. I think we did that with our factoring examples. All right, but the same thing will apply here. Just remember the plus and the minus means that you have 1 of each sign. Now let's look at our second example here, and notice that although it's not x squared, we have an entire set of parentheses squared. So we can apply this rule again. We lose the square on the thing that is squared. So 2x minus 3 loses the square. But on the right side, we get this plus and minus the square root. So we'll have plus and minus the square root of 25. So let me insert that. Plus and minus square root of 25. Sorry, my dogs are making noise in the background. All right, now we know the square root of 25. So we know that the square root of 25 is 5. So really I have plus and minus 5. There are 2 solutions to work out here. One of them is 2x minus 3 equals 5. And then the other one is 2x minus 3 equals negative 5. And we've got to work both of those out. So if we add 3 to both sides, we're going to get 2x equals 8. And if we add 3 over here, we'll get 2x equals negative 2. And then if we divide out our 2 on both sides, we'll get, oops, didn't mean for that to happen. We'll get x equals 4 here. And over here, we'll get x equals negative 1, 2 solutions. Now realize, if that 25 had not popped out of the square root, we would still have solved this thing. And perhaps I should do one more that actually shows it not coming out. Let's solve 2x. Same idea. So let's just do this one here. Notice it's almost exactly like this one. I just changed this to a 24. So in that first step, we're going to get 2x minus 3 equals plus and minus the square root of 24. And we don't know the square root of 24, but we can break the square root of 24 down using the skills from algebra, previous algebra classes. Remember that 24 is 4 times 6, so we can actually do the square root of 4 and leave the 6 inside the radical. So that is going to give us 2x minus 3 equals plus and minus 2 square root of 6. So now, again, there's two equations to solve. 2x minus 3 equals positive 2 square root of 6. I'm just going to copy and paste that, make it easier. And then, of course, I'm going to solve 2x minus 3 is equal to the negative 2 square root of 6. All right, so let's do both of those. So I'm going to add 3 to both equations, just like I did up here when I was solving. So if I add 3 on the left side, let me add 3, and of course I'm going to do the same thing to the second solution, add 3. Well, I really can't add 3 to the square root, so what I end up with is 2x equals 3 plus 2 square root of 6, and then same thing occurs over on my second solution, 2x equals 3 minus 2 square root of 6. And then lastly, I need to divide by 2. Now I'm just going to use the draw feature here to do this. And we have to be careful. When we divide by 2, we divide the whole right side by 2. So all of this divided by 2. And I know that's not very clean looking. Divide by 2 here. And all of this divided by 2. And don't think that you can cancel this 2 with this 2. You cannot. You would have to be able to factor out of the entire numerator the number 2 to cancel with the 2 in the bottom. And we can't factor 2 out of the numerator because 3 is not divisible by 2. So you must leave it right there. Those are our two solutions. All right, now let's go to completing the square. When we complete the square, we're going to do the 6 steps that I have listed here. We're going to arrange our equations so that x squared and x are in descending order on one side and the constant is on the other. We're going to divide out whatever is in front of our x squared. We're going to take the number in front of x, divide it by 2 and square it. We're going to add that number that we got to both sides of the equation. We're going to factor the left side, and then we're going to end up doing a problem just like this one back here. Okay, so let's actually do it. And let me get out of the draw feature here. All right, so first we want our x squared and our x on the left side in descending order, which we have, but we want this negative 9 over on the other side. And so I'm going to move it to the other side and make it positive. When it goes across the equal sign, we'll have 3x squared plus 12x minus 9, equal 9, when I moved it. All right, now I want to divide everything by the number that's in front of x squared. So I'm going to divide every single coefficient by 3. Oops, and I see that I left my x off there. All right, so, and again, I'll just use the draw to make this quicker. So we want to divide by 3. We want to divide by 3. And I can't draw very well, and I want to divide by 3 every single one of these. I know that looks pretty awful. All right, so I'll go down here to this line. So I'm left with x squared for my first term. 12 divided by 3 is going to be 4x, and 9 divided by 3 on the other side will be 3. All right, so we've done step 2. Now let's take the coefficient of x, divide it by 2, and square it. So if I take this number right here, the 4, and divide it by 2, that is 2. So just down to the side here, 4 divided by 2 is 2. And then when I square 2, I get 4. Now it's just coincidence, oops. It's just coincidence that that's the same as what I started with. So just keep that in mind. That's just coincidence. All right, so now let's take that 4 and we're going to add it to both sides of the equation. So I'm going to have x squared plus 4x and add that 4 to the left and also, whoops, add it to the right. So I really have 7 now on the right. Okay, so next step, factor the left side as a perfect square. Now that's okay if you've forgotten how to factor as a perfect square. We're going to do it now. So I'm going to have parentheses squared. And here's how I decide what goes in the parentheses. If I take the square root of x squared, that's x. So that goes first. Whatever the sign is right here, that tells me whether I have a plus or a minus in between. And then I take the square root of 4, and that's what comes second. That's 2. And then on the right side, I just have my 7. All right, so square root of the first, square root of the last, and whatever this sign is here, it takes care of it. Doesn't matter what this number is here, we've already taken care of it when we did this computation, so you don't have to even pay attention to that number. All right, now let's notice that this looks a lot like what we did up here. All right, so let's finish this problem. Let's use our square root property. When we use our square root property, the square goes away on the left, and we get plus and minus the square root of 7 on the right. All right, now we're not done. We've got to get x by itself. So we have two equations to solve. X plus 2 equals the positive square root of 7. And again, I'll just copy the square root of 7. So I'll have the positive square root of 7. And then the other equation is x plus 2 equals the negative square root of 7. And we need to subtract 2 to solve. So let's subtract 2. Subtract 2. We can also do it over here to that second equation. Subtract 2. Subtract 2. Now once again, since we can't add something that doesn't have a radical with something that does, all we're going to do is say that x is negative 2 plus the square root of 7. And then our second solution is going to be x is negative 2 minus the square root of 7. And we have it. And those will be the two answers that you put into My Open Math. All right, let's see if we can't get through this second example really fast. All right, so first we need to move that 30 to the other side. And actually, I want to change this just so we're not dealing with a complex number when we get done here. All right, so I'm going to move that 30 to the other side, and it will become positive. There's step 1. Step 2, let's divide by whatever's in front of x squared. So we'll divide everything by 2. Well, when I divide 2x squared by 2, I get x squared. When I divide 10x by 2, I get 5x. And when I divide 30 by 2, I get 6. All right, so now let's go ahead and do step 2. Now here we're dealing with some nasty fractions. We're going to divide the 5 by 2 and square it. So 5 divided by 2 is just 5 halves. If I square that, square the bottom and square the top, that's 25 over 4. Let's now add 25 over 4 to both sides of the equation. X squared plus 5x plus 25 over 4 equals 6 plus 25 over 4. All right, now on the left side, I'm going to go ahead and complete the square. Make my parentheses squared. X squared's square root is x. 25/4 square root is 5 over 2. Square root of the top, square root of the bottom, and a plus sign in the middle. On the right side, though, I do want to add these together. Now, be careful because many times it's going to ask for the fraction in my math lab or My Open Math. So 6, we want to multiply it by the denominator of 4. This is 24 over 4 plus 25 over 4. And I may run out of room or time on this because I'm only allowed a 15-minute video. We'll see if we can't get through it real quick. All right. So I moved it ahead a little bit just so we wouldn't run out of time. So the square root of 49 over 4 ends up being 7 halves. We have to solve two equations. X plus 5 halves equals 7 halves. X plus 5 halves equals negative 7 halves. And when we subtract negative 5 halves, we get 2 over 2 or 1. and negative 12 over 2, or negative 6.